very excited to welcome Heidi Cullinan and Iggy Toma to the podcast. Heidi has always enjoyed a good love story, provided it had a happy ending. Proud to be from the first Midwestern state with full marriage equality, Heidi is a vocal advocate for LGBT rights. She writes positive outcome romances for LGBT characters stuck against insurmountable odds because she believes there's no such thing as too much happily ever after. Amen. Iggy is a voiceover artist, musician, and activist based in New York City. He's an avid reader of romance and mystery, and he has a soft spot for daytime soap operas. Among the authors he's voiced books for, besides Heidi, are Anna Szabo, Marie Sexton Piper Vaughn, Mia Kierick, and others. Welcome, Heidi and Iggy.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
So the prompt for this interview actually came from a couple of our patrons when we asked who we should have on the show in 2018. And you two actually came up a couple of times because of the Roosevelt series, which is Carry the Ocean and Shelter the Sea. And podcast listeners certainly know that I have fallen hard for those books over the past couple of weeks. Heidi, let's start with you and the inspiration behind the Roosevelt series.
Oh, gosh. So Carry the Ocean kind of started it just sort of started in a weird little germ. We were watching a show that I can't even remember the name of at the moment. My husband would know if he were in here because I forget little details like that, but he remembers all of them. But there was a show that had a side character. It was something very sci-fi, like they had weird powers, and I forget what the autistic character's powers were. But the show was fairly decent, but I was very interested in the autistic character, and it started reminding me of when I was in my 20s. I did a lot of work with elderly people with mental and physical disabilities, and that included autistic people, people with autism, and people with Down syndrome. And then a few years later, I worked with teens with that exact same population, and it always stuck with me because the incredible contrast beyond age that I remembered at that time was the way that, like, you could tell because of the generations, like how those individuals had grown up. Like, obviously the teens were still teens, but the people that I were within it was like a county home kind of situation. Most of those individuals had never, very few of them had ever lived with their families. They had always been in institutions. And so the way they interacted, even with, like, they viewed staff as family, but transient family, and they had rarely any family come visit them. And they had a real different sense of, like, what they were owed as even humans, and their sense of being human was really different, and what their rights were as humans. And then the kids, because it was a different time and different era, they were mainstreamed into schools. They all lived at home. The very idea that anybody would send them away simply because they had disabilities was like, I mean, that would be like horrific. And so they were just vastly different, and that always had rung with me. And then watching the show, like stored all that up in my head. And so the show, like, ended really abruptly, and, like, we didn't even finish the last few episodes because we heard that the ending was unsatisfying. And so we sort of wandered off, but that character kept ringing in my head. And it wasn't even, like, the best character because, of course, the actor wasn't autistic. So this was, like, somebody's perception, but it just kept ringing in my head, and it made me think of all that stuff in the past. And there were a couple of the both teens and the older adults that had really, like been people that I really connected with, and I was like, God, I wonder where they are. And then that just sort of turned into, there was one day, it's sort of in the same way that, like, Ro Davis from Nora Ranch, like, just, I was washing dishes at the sink one day and Ro Davis started talking to me. Just Emmett Washington just sort of appeared in my head, and it's like the first person ones are always the worst because they just start, like, saying, they're like blah, 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 blah. And so Emmett Washington started talking to me, and I would walk around and I'd think, oh, that would be an interesting story. But I was like, God, I don't even know how I'd tell that story. And so, but the Emmett Washington would just, and I started, as soon as I named him, I'm like, oh, I know I'm in trouble because now he's got a name. And so, but I wasn't sure I'd tell it. So it wasn't so much that I was scared, but I was just like hesitant because I was like, well, I just don't know. But it kept coming back. And then there was one time where I was like, I wasn't sure what I was going to write. And I kind of sat there going, well, what story should I write right now? Which one should I focus on? And it was just like in the back of my head, it was like Emmett in full force stood up and went, and it just like in full Emmett mode. And I was like, Emmett, did you want your story? And it was like, yes. And I was like, okay, well, I'll give this a try. And it just like barreled out. I don't remember when I exactly started writing it, but I remember it just came out. But I was like, who is going to take this story? I was sure Sam Hain wouldn't. And in hindsight, I probably should have like given it to like a proper agent and sent it out and said, somebody take this, because I mean, I had foreign, like I had a British publisher come to me and they wanted me to take out the sex, which I was like, no, like they wanted the rights they wanted to republish it like there separately, and they wanted to like mainstream, like full on publish it, but they wanted the sex taken out. And I was like, well, no, thank you. But because it always has had this weird resonance. But when I wrote it, I was like, I don't even know who's going to let me publish this. And so I was mostly just like, I'm just going to write this book. So I wrote it thinking, I'll never get this published. I just wrote it. And I didn't think anything about it. I just wrote it going, well, this might just sit on my desk. And so I never thought about, I mean, I wanted sequels, but I never knew if they'd happen. I didn't even know. I sort of wrote it. I didn't have any big thoughts about it. I just put it down, and that was how I got started. It just got started as this very strange wild hair. And it started with Emmett, and then I was like, well, who is he with? And it began around Emmett, and then Jeremy grew like up against him, because my thought was, well, I don't want, because I knew exactly who Emmett was in my head. I knew he was strong, and I knew he was amazing, but I also knew that just by his existing on the planet, people would have ideas of who he was and who he wasn't, and they'd take one look at him and make judgments. And I thought, okay, I want to put somebody with him that's like the polar opposite, so that they look at that person and think, oh, they're perfect and everything's fine, and that inside it's a mess. And I'm like, I like that contrast. And that was where I started. And I had ideas of where that was going to go. And I had this whole other trajectory, see my plans. And then they got together and I'm like, oh, now we're going somewhere different. And so I just went, okay, well, I'll just follow you instead. And then we ended up with what we ended up with. And then David showed up. I didn't even know David was going to show up. And he was sort of the Randy Jansen of the story. There's always a Randy Jansen. I was like, oh, look, it's Randy fucking everything up. And so, can I swear? Swearing okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so I did it just sort of like, but it was good. It was like, okay, here you are to mess everything up and probably save the day. So yes, and it was good. And then we had Blues Brothers and everything. So yeah, so that's how that happened. And then I didn't know what to do with the book 2, and it was supposed to be David, and then it ended up being, I tried to write a short story for my patrons, which ended up being Shelter the Sea. And so that's how that happened. That's how here we are. Then I got angry at the election and what I was doing with mental health. And so I guess these books are just me going, I don't know, I'll just write this, which isn't a weird strategy, but I guess that's mine.
At what point in the process do you go from telling their story that they've got as characters and then doing what must be a ton of research to layer in all the stuff that makes Emmett and Jeremy and all of the assorted political things around having a place like the Roosevelt House and what was going on in Iowa?
I do it all at the same time. the Iowa, like, especially speaking of Salt of the Sea, like the political stuff of Iowa, I knew. Like, I mean, I've known that Iowa is like going. I mean, we're just like, the thing is that, like, since while I wrote the book, I had to keep editing because, I mean, just from knowing, watching, just even reading like Twitter headlines, like Iowa kept having erosion in its mental health care and coverage, and it had to do a lot with the way, because we privatized Medicaid, and so if you are on, and then we have closed almost every bed. Like, the biggest thing is, like, in 1950, Iowa had, like, I wrote them in like a blog tour I did, but it was like something like 1,500 beds. Like, so if you went into a hospital or anywhere and said, look, I'm having trouble, I need, I'm feeling having trouble, like, I thoughts like I might kill myself, or I'm not feeling okay, or you took your loved one in and said, look, this person needs special care, they need to be admitted to the hospital for mental health reasons. There were 1,500 beds, and the population was less. I mean, Iowa has actually bled a lot of population. For a lot of it's because it's doing really backwards growth things right now, but it's still a lot bigger than it was in 1950. But we have, I forget what the thing is. I think it's like, I want to say it's like 350 beds. I mean, it's like a really stupid number. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, we have, like, I think double the population, or like at least 75% more population, but we have less than half the beds that we had then. So, and it is not uncommon. Like, if you went in my town and you went into the hospital and said, I'm feeling suicidal, it's completely conceivable that you would sit in the ER for more than a day, just sitting in the waiting room, waiting for a bed, saying, I'm feeling like I'm going to kill myself. You would just sit there because there's just nowhere to go. And that's with insurance. And so, like, if you have Medicaid or whatever, you might have to drive over an hour because they made it all privatized. And so if you have, and most people, I mean, the Roosevelt is impossible. It wouldn't exist. That's the thing, is like, some people write me who like know more about the way these populations would be channeled and everything. It's like, this is completely impossible. I go, I know. I wrote it because I wish it could. But I mean, anywhere that would exist like that, first of all, it would be crazy expensive. You'd have to have like mad money to both fund it and to live there. But even if you did, you would probably be on some sort of like public funding. And in Iowa, you would then be on one of these, except for Emmett, who had a job, which is really unique. You would have to be on this public funding. And so in Iowa, you would want to be one of previously 3, now I think 2, maybe 1 private companies who bought Medicaid, and these are just your choices. And so they'll say to you, you have to get your health care, you have to drive to Des Moines. I mean, I would just imagine that you're one of these residents of the Roosevelt, and you have to get to Des Moines for one of your healthcare visits. So these people have to ferry you down because you can't drive. And Des Moines from Ames is 40 minutes. And then you have to go to one of these places where you sit. And when we were foster parents, we had to take we had to go down there, and you sat for sometimes an hour just waiting to go in for like a 5-minute appointment. And you didn't get great care, and you had to fight to get what you want. And we knew what we were fighting for, and we knew what to ask. But if you don't know, especially if you're tired and you don't know what you're asking for, and if you're just an aide and you're like, if you're just there to like ferry, nobody's gonna ask. You're just gonna collect and go. And so all that spirals onto everything. And so I knew all that. So that's what, like, part of what I wanted to put in the book. I wanted to put some of that frustration, but I couldn't. I was always like pulling back. I'm like, I knew all of this stuff. And so I was like, how do I put that without like putting it in there? And so I tried to like contain it to something that you could track and feel the frustration with, without bogging it down in so much that you would just be like, okay, Heidi just got way too technical. And I knew I would probably get too technical for some people, but I was trying to make it so that it was basically just this emotional football that you could track, get invested in, get your heart broken with, and then go, but there's hope. And, and you can press anything on it. You can say that's politics in general. That's, whatever it is that you want to put your thing in. I wanted to make it about like that. I mean, I knew they had to fail. I knew they had to not make it through, but I wanted.
Spoiler alert.
Sorry, should I not do that?
No, that's fine.
I assumed people had read the book. But I wanted to make it that they could, because it was not about, it was about finding, like, it had to be about finding their strength despite adversity. Because Carry the Ocean was all about, not really about winning so much as about like celebration of, you're awesome. And this, I wanted to be about, like, book 2 was more like, okay, let's be in the world and have it be shitty at you, which is real, and then go, you can be awesome despite the shit. And I mean, you don't have to have a disability to need that message, but how great to go, well, I feel like I have all this shit in my way, but if Emmett can do it, I can do it. And
yeah, and it just added to the reality. I mean, nobody thought we'd be in the political spot we're in now, and that happened. Yeah. And so while I was sad they didn't win, I'm like, yeah, that's the way the world works right there. Let's hear from Iggy a little bit. These books are different than what you've done for Heidi to date, as far as I can tell. What was it like seeing this manuscript and finding these voices to bring all this into a reality?
Yeah, I was thrilled when I first read it. I mean, I think I've always loved Heidi's work, and but when I read these books, I was like, wow, these are pretty special. And Heidi had kind of warned me. She said these are very special and very important to me. So I knew how that they needed to be treated with care and as much integrity as possible. But I think ultimately the task is the same. I kind of mine the text for any hints that Heidi gives me about how these characters sound. And Emmett was a very unique case for how to make a voice that felt real and specific, and something that captured not only that he's a person with autism, but also just his tenacious, inner self. He's such a dynamic character that all of that had to come through in a way that, I could still kind of keep the narrative flowing and have a good rhythm. But so I found a little, when I'm creating a voice, I have to find what Heidi kind of shines a light on, and then I have to go from there and kind of make my own choices. But in the text, Jeremy describes Emmett as he sounded slightly robotic, all his words stuffed together in a string, all the vocal inflections put in the wrong places. So there's those little hints in there. And then I thought about if I knew anybody that reminded me of Emmett, and there's a guy in my life who I think is kind of he's a person with autism, but also has that endlessly tenacious and in no way hides who he is and is upfront who he is. So I used him as kind of inspiration. I remember I sent, he had done a video for a college class, and I sent it to Heidi, and she was like, yes, that's perfect. So he was kind of my inspiration for Emmett. But yeah, so I think that these books added a bit of challenge, but in a way that was that much more thrilling.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Darren a little bit, because here's an interesting character from the way I was looking at it, in that he doesn't speak for himself. He has the signing that he does, and also the iPad that speaks for him on occasion, and yet you built a voice for him.
Yeah, no, that's funny that you brought that up, because that was a unique challenge. There are times designated in the text where it's a computerized robotic voice, so I took a stab at that. But I thought that it would be, that I needed to give him a voice beyond that. That was kind of the essence of him, because he is a very bright human being, and he does communicate with his friends, just like anybody does, but with a slightly different way. So I wanted to give him a voice that kind of hit at who he is as a person. He's kind of, I think he's just kind of a really sweet love muffin. So I kind of gave him a warm, slightly just like the voice of someone who is super empathetic and caring, because I think he is as a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that really comes off even in his robotic voice. I think the way you set it up is, because I can't remember how it works out anymore, because it all runs as one story. But I think we had him signing before we ever heard his computer voice, and those two, there's a connection between those two that was, to me as the reader, was so perfect.
Good.
What was your collaboration on these books? Because I having talked to voice artists in the past, it's been when we get the stuff, we talk a little bit to the writer about it, then we go off and record it. Because of these books, was there more collaboration than usual, or different than what you two had done in the past?
Probably about the same, a little bit more, I guess. As I said, I when I was wrestling with how to voice Emmett, I sent Heidi that video of my friend. So that was kind of an initial step in to be like, just to make sure we were on the same page. You know, it's a book that demands, I think, a bold choice, but that's a little intimidating as an interpretive artist like myself. You know, I don't want to go way off from the voice in Heidi's head. So I touched base to make sure that I was in the right realm. And yeah, Heidi gave me the green light.
Yeah, I haven't ever had Iggy usually he's asked me questions about books, but I don't think I've ever gone, no. Usually I go, yeah, that sounds really good. Like he asked about Darren too, and I had lots of times he'll ask things and go, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't think of it. I didn't realize that would be a problem. Sorry. Yeah. But
as you wrote Shelter, did Iggy's voices just populate your head all the more now that you knew exactly what these characters sounded like?
Yeah. That's always fun once he's voiced a book and there's a sequel, then it's like then they just are there in my head, and then like the Love Lessons books, now I know how they all sound. Like there was a small riot on my Patreon because I had asked him, I said, so the next Love Lessons book is going to be the girls, and I had said to Iggy, I said, will you voice it even though it's the girls? He said, well, look, I can get you I can get you some female voice actors. And I said, I don't know, I don't think people will like it if you don't voice it. And I asked my patrons, I said, so what do you think? And they were like, no, Iggy must read it. And I said, that was the whole thing. And people were like, you've got to read it. You know, there's gonna be blood. So oh yeah. So
well, that'll be another fun challenge. I look forward to it.
Speaking of female voices and a little bit more of spoilery territory, you have to voice a certain popular female talk show host in Shelter. What was that daunting to voice someone who is real?
Yeah, it adds a little bit of added pressure, because especially someone so iconic. So I immediately got on YouTube and did what makes her voice and different speech patterns and inflections, just so that, you know, I never expect that I'm going to transform and suddenly sound exactly like that person. Hopefully the listeners don't expect that either, but I just want the essence of them to come through, to just give to make the scene more full and more dynamic. But yeah, so there was many a YouTube video to try to figure out how to pull that off.
And it was essence, because I mean, you're not like, an impersonator,
Yeah.
But yeah, for me it worked. It's like, oh, that's awesome.
She has very specific rhythms, so that helped.
Mm-hmm. So the big question, Heidi, is: are there more Roosevelt books? You've talked about, maybe finding David's story in there and things like that while we've been talking.
Yeah, no, there will be more. I always meant my original thought that there were going to be three, and it was going to be Emmett and then David, and then I didn't know who the third one was going to be, but I thought I'd figure it out. And now I'm really confused because it really bugs me that there's two Emmett and Jeremy ones that I'm like, that really makes my skin crawl. I'm like, there should be three because I don't like two. And so, but I don't know what the third one would be. And I'm like, well, should I write the third one next, or should I write another one and come back? And I have so much on my plate right now that I'm like, I have so many other books that have been like waiting because of the small trash fire that was Sam Hain closing. And so right now that's where I'm at. I'm like, well, what is next? And so, but there were always, because it was going to be David's story and then the other, but now I'm like, well, is there going to be another Emmett story and Emmett and Jeremy story, or is it going to be the David story next? And then because if there's three Emmett stories, does that mean there's three David stories? And I'm like, I don't know. And so now I got to figure out how many stories there are, where they are, and what's going on. My daughter wants there to be 1 million because she really likes the series. She calls them her cinnamon rolls, and so so she would like 1 million of these. And so I don't know that I can do 1 million, but yeah, there's definitely more. I just have to figure out how many and how it works out. But they take me a while to write because it's not even just research, it's just thinking and making sure I do it properly and because I feel like they're romances, but I feel like there's so much other stuff going on in the background that I have to make sure that goes properly, and so I have to think about how I want to do it. And I would prefer to write these books like, I feel like all my books lately have been written like while I'm on fire. And so my new goal is I would like to get to where I'm not writing books while I'm on fire. And I would really like to write these books like with care and grace and have fun with them. And so that's where I want to get to, but I'm definitely not to that stage yet. I'm trying to write 3 books by the end of March, and I'm near the end of the first one. So and then I have to hurry up and write another one. So
I love that
I'm not on social media right now.
I love that your daughter read these books. Did she read all of your books, or was it these in particular?
No, she I told her she could read whatever she wanted, but I explained to her what is in some of them, and then she goes, yeah, I'll pass. She likes she listened to Antisocial on the way down to Texas when we were going to an anime convention. She was going to do something else, and then I was listening to it because I hadn't had a chance to listen to it yet. And she and her friend like stopped what they were doing, and they got so into it and they really liked Iggy's voice, and they liked that one. But she likes the Love Lessons books, and she likes Carry the Ocean. But those are the only ones she's done. She's about to start Fever Pitch, but she has not. That's about as far as she might do Dance with Me, but she doesn't go. She will not do anything racy at all. So that that sort of like exits out a whole bunch of the catalog right there. She might later, but she says that's weird when like there are parts in Love Lesson. She said, "Mom, this is weird to read." And I go, "Yeah, you should not read a whole bunch of my stuff." I said, "Special Delivery is definitely out. Never read No Romance." She's like, "That's just weird that you wrote that, Mom." And I go, "Yeah, no, sorry."
No,
but yeah, she reads some of it, but yeah.
Well, she picked a good one with these for sure. Now, you two have worked together on all of Heidi's books, which is 15 as I count it on Audible, and that goes back to Love Lessons in 2015. How did you two come together? Was it a basic ACX audition, or was there more there than that?
No, it was a random ad through. So Sam Haines subcontracted through. Like, I can't remember the name. It was through some other third party, and those
Insatiable Press, I think.
That's it. There you go. Thank you. Sorry, I'm bad with names. But and those books are still with them. I forget when the contract runs out. I'm not sure what happens when it does. That's another day. One fire at a time. So, and it was just a random hookup. They just said, "Here's your audiobook," and I listened to it and I went, "Wow, I really like this." And then there's a blogger promoter who really is into audiobooks was trying to do a promo thing because she loves the Love Lessons books and she loved the audio, and she was like, "I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to find Iggy Toma." And I'm like, "If you do, can you get me the email? Because I want to tell them how much I love that book." And then they were doing the next one. I said, "Make sure that it's that guy because I really like that guy." And I kept going, "I'm that guy. I like that guy. I like that guy." And then we just started talking, and I think he eventually asked me a question about one of them, like, "What's this thing?" or something. And then when I started doing indie stuff, I was like, do you do indie? Can you do this with it? And then it just sort of snowballed. I just kept saying when they were doing stuff, I said, only him. It has to be him. And the sales were good. So they're like, yes, only him. And I'm like, yes, always him. And now I'm going over to Dreamstone with this series. And I said, it must be Iggy. It has to be Iggy. And then I showed them the sales numbers. They're like, you're right. It has to be Iggy.
Yeah, I just lucked out. I mean, it was just the producing company, Insatiable Press, contacted me about it, and I was like, "Wow, these are really good." And then down the road, got in contact with Heidi, and we've kind of clung on to each other ever since.
And it looked like it was like your Love Lessons was maybe your third audiobook, or at least the third that showed up in Audible.
Yeah, I was pretty green at that point. I just kind of started this new chapter in my career, and just lucked out that I landed with Heidi so early, and that I think that her books are so beautifully written that it makes my job that much easier. And so I think that those books themselves kind of stepped up my game. They demanded a bit more from me in a way that I think made me a better narrator. And I'm just lucky to be a part of it.
What do you think makes the partnership so strong?
I would say that there's a mutual respect and admiration that I think is essential. I just really love her books, so I'll always go out of my way to make sure I can be available for them. And then I admire the material so much that I want to do my best work possible for them. And then I really appreciate that Heidi respects me as an artist and gives me a lot of respect and kind of power to interpret, which is ultimately one of the scary things about my job. Is somebody spends years writing a book and doing all this research, and then I got to show up and do the best possible audio for it. So the fact that she trusts me, I think, encourages me to really to invest as fully as I possibly can.
I've always been impressed with the care that Iggy takes in doing the work for the books, because like I said, there's whenever he asks a question, I'm always like, I didn't even think of that. Like, I mean, I know you have a question coming up about it, but like the worst was Antisocial. I was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize what I did. And he'll research like how to say the words of towns, and like in the care, like the thing that got me when, I mean, the first book was Love Lessons, but like all the different voices and the way that he can make, like, I love to listen to the audio because it's like it was my book, I wrote it, but I'll listen and I get caught up in it because it doesn't sound like it's my book anymore. And it really isn't, because it's Iggy's book now too. And so it's so fun to take my work and it turns it into somebody else's. And as soon as I started doing indie audio, at first I really didn't understand the system, and I was having a really hard time going and since it was a little bit new for Iggy too, we were having a really hard time. Like, I was like, I just want to say I want you on this system, and can I just click the button? And we were like, I said, here it is. And so there'd be these times where I go, okay, here's my thing, but it's like you have to be public for like just a fraction of a second. And so at first I was really bad, and it looked like I was putting out an open audition. And then I would get all these like people like slammed with these, here, I want to do your thing. And I would listen and I'd be like, no. And it wasn't even just because it wasn't Iggy. I was like, no, that's not right. No. And I would like freak out. And it made me more like, I'm like, no, Iggy has to accept it. You have to come and do it. I was like so freaking out. I'm like, if he doesn't, we'll do it. I don't know what I'm going to do. So then even more when he accepted, I was like, my God, thank God. So yeah, no. Married for life, man. Audio moment. I mean, it's like no. So,
is there anything out there, Iggy, that you think would be outside the comfort zone to work on? I mean, we've even talked about here just a few minutes ago the concept of the next, I think it was Love Lessons book, being female, and everybody saying you had to do it. Is there anything out there you think that would be beyond what you think your ability is?
I think that if so Heidi brought up Antisocial and Antisocial and how and the challenges of having Japanese, and I've had to do languages that are not my native language in books before. And it's certainly a challenge to try to make it sound reasonably close to somebody who actually uses that language. If Heidi was like, I've written a book and one character speaks only in French, I think I'd be like, you know what, Heidi, I might have to bow out on this one because it's just going to sound ridiculous. But you know, in regards to characters, you know, I'll really take on anything as long as I have her blessing. The female characters, I just whenever I voice a female character, I want to make sure that it doesn't sound like a guy doing a silly voice. So that'll be an interesting challenge to sustain that for so long. But I think there are ways to just slightly adjust the voice in a way that the essence is there, and you can fall into the story. So yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, and that was a unique challenge because I think it's because the series has been so established, and I think that's why people were so like against the idea, because they're like, well, we know these other characters are going to show up, and that because like the narration is still, you know, the narration is overall in like. The narration is still in Iggy's voice, and so it's mostly when people speak, and they've also heard all these characters speak because it's not new people. It's two people that it's Mina and Rose. They've already heard both Mina and Rose be voiced by Iggy, and so in their minds they're like, well, he's already done them, and so you know, so yeah.
And the genesis to that question, because it might have come off sounding like a weird one, was we've talked to some audio narrators before, and it's always been, well, I understand why I didn't do that book because maybe it's, you know, the alpha jock who's really outside of my comfort zone as a narrator. So I was just because, and to see somebody stick with one author for all the books is a little abnormal. to see, and it's kind of cool that you guys have this tight partnership going on.
Well, at this point, he's sort of like my voice, and so it's like I think readers would be really like, "What happened?" Like they would. It's like people would really freak out, and I would freak out. I would be like, "I don't know what to do." I'm also like I get real married to my people. Like that's like one of the like things I mentioned, like these books that I'm writing right now are books that will be out in 2019 for Dreamspinner, and I brought literally my entire team. The only person I don't have coming over is my formatter. And if I could bring him, I would. Just because I'm like, I got my people, and I'm like, they're not leaving, man. Like everybody's coming because it's because once I get my group, I'm like, nope, we're all here and we're not going anywhere because it works, and I'm not fixing. My grandpa had a sign in his garage that hung there like until he died and they sold the house, but it said, "If it works, don't fix it." And that is, I subscribe to that motto. It's like, nope. It's working, not changing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, change, not my same hair for 10 years. Nope, not my way.
And let's talk about Antisocial a little bit. We've danced around the topic of that book a little bit. It's the latest of the audiobooks that have come out, and it's certainly different from the Roosevelt books for sure. Heidi, tell us a little bit about it.
About the audio of it, or just the book itself? The book
itself.
The book itself. So it is a new adult, and So I guess it's like the Roosevelt books in that it's also new adult, but it is set in. It's more like the Love Lessons probably because it's set in college, and it's about very reclusive art student who does not want to engage with anyone, and a very gregarious fraternity boy who engages with everyone. And once he needs to get this, he needs to get the art student to, he needs to get him to, his fraternity has ruined his painting that was on this wall, and he's trying to get him to like forgive them, and he's like, he won't. And basically like they're like, he's his weakness because he can't charm him, and that begins this long snowball of everything. And it's the book has a lot of, it's a big community book, and there's a whole cast of characters. It got it was supposed to have this tiny sprinkling of Japanese influence, which apparently was kudzu and went everywhere. And then there was all this, they started speaking Japanese, and there was Japanese lessons, and which then Iggy had to do. And they end up in Japan, and there's all kinds of crap in there. And there's manga in there, and which is why the cover is a manga cover. And so yeah, that had some fun challenge because Iggy had to speak some Japanese. There's Japanese names like of people, even when he didn't have to speak Japanese. There are Japanese like characters, like, and yeah, there was. I didn't even think of that until I had it. Like I had to send him a file of, I think it was half an hour. I just like listed like how to say a bunch of things. Then I sent all these links to like places of how to say stuff. And I felt really bad. I was like, I'm sorry.
No, but Heidi was so generous in helping me out, because I was like, and that's my job, I need to figure those things out. But sometimes when I work on a book that does demand something extra like that, a good first stop can be checking with the author, see what resources they used. And Heidi sent me this elaborate series of links to really make my job quite a bit easier. So I was very, very grateful.
Well, there's all this funky stuff about Japanese, and one of the things that I knew, one of the weirdest traps that I knew that you could only know if you were actually studying Japanese, is that if you're listening to women speak Japanese versus men speak, like there's a different way in like the lilt of the words. And so if you were, I kept trying to send him links of men speaking, because he was going to be because if he used women, it was going to sound different, and I didn't want anybody who actually spoke Japanese to go, oh, that audio narrator. I was like, no, I don't want to set you up bad. So I was like trying to help him out because I didn't know tons. I mean, I still don't know very much. I'm still pretty crappy because I couldn't. I was studying really well at the beginning of the year, and then Sam Hain happened, and it was like everything went to crap. And so, but at that point, I still had some retention, and so I'm like, no, I'm not gonna send you down that road. So. It was just a matter of like Googling and like, here you go. But
life is so much better with Google.
Yeah.
So let's talk origin stories for a little bit. How did you get started in the audiobook narration realm, Iggy?
Well, I was doing some voiceover and I had some friends that were in the audiobook world, so I thought it would be something that perhaps I could pull off, and just pursued it, auditioned for a few things, made some connections at various producers, and Insatiable Press sent some books my way that I was really grateful for, and AudioGo BBC, which actually unfortunately no longer exists, but they kind of gave me a start, and Tantor has been really good to me. So yeah, it was just kind of like you have to find a way to get a foot in the door. But once I did, I've been really lucky, and it's been very sustaining. But yeah, I've always been a storyteller and appreciated what it means to weave a great tale, and so I guess it was a natural fit, but I had to kind of stumble in. It's not a great answer, but it's funny when I ask other people about how they end up doing a specific thing. It's always inevitably like, well, I was walking along and then something happened, and I just suddenly turned directions, and I feel like it was that for me. I just kind of stumbled into it and got really lucky, and the rest is history.
It was mentioned in your bio that you were an avid reader of romance. What were you reading before you jumped into reading it professionally?
Well, I guess I worry that my bio is a little deceptive because honestly, I wasn't reading romance before I stepped into the business. And I guess I just I come from a pretty conservative background, and I guess I thought it was taboo and something that I wouldn't be into. And then as I read it, I was like, oh my God, this is so great. That was another thing about becoming a narrator is I was introduced to a genre that I had kind of a preconceived notion of what it was like, and it was just not that at all. So it kind of unlocked that for me and gave me something, added something to my life. And it's I'm pretty lucky that I actually like what I do. That the material I get to work on is stuff that I enjoy, and for various reasons. It can be deliciously sexy, but at the same time it can be beautiful love stories, and the fact that I'm paired up with Heidi, her books are always you can expect them to be steamy, but also moving and surprising. So yeah, I guess I was introduced to the genre through my work, and just realized there's a depth there that I just had not known existed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned the depth in and that there's steamy times, and there's a sex scene in Shelter that is from Jeremy's point of view that is unlike any sex scene that I've ever written, in just how it dives so deep on Jeremy's emotions and what he's feeling in the moment. It's not even, the steps through of what's going on in the sex. It's his perception of the sex and what's happening. And it was unreal. As both a reader and an author, I'm like, that's awesome. And it's like, how do I do that in my own work? that it just blew me away. And it's interesting you kind of picked on that kind of moment.
Yeah. And I read both gay romance and guy-girl romance, and but I'll say that I am more drawn, I think, to gay romance. I think that there's inherent a level of social justice there that I find super compelling, and it adds to the narratives of people demanding to be seen and to be recognized, and that and love is love is love, and just all those themes add, I think, so much more to the genre in general.
Mm-hmm.
And Heidi adds the additional layers of, Emmett and Jeremy have these obstacles of not being neurotypical, and it just, Heidi minds that and makes you root for these characters even more, and be inspired by them. So yeah, I'm blown away by how much can be accomplished in these books.
Mm-hmm. And Heidi, for those who don't know your origin story, how did you come to write gay romance?
So I'm one of those nerds that's been writing forever. I wrote in high school. Like, this is, of course, I grew up back in the day. You did not have no computers in the classroom. I was writing in a notebook, and I thought I was taking notes, and I was writing novels. But I never did anything with them. I just was always writing, and I had written I don't know, 4 or 5 novels by the time I went to college, but they were crap. I mean, I still have them. They were just and I knew it too, and it frustrated me because I could always tell. And my daughter talks about this too with her drawing. She's always frustrated. She says she feels like she finishes a drawing, and then literally a week later she'll draw a new one, and the one from the week before is so bad. And I'm like, yeah, you're at that age where you're growing and learning so fast that you can't keep up with yourself. And I'm like, it'll get better. Don't worry about it. Just keep drawing. It'll be fine. But I was so frustrated because I'm like, everything I do is crap. And so then in college, I started reading, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so terrible. These people are so great. And I wasn't studying writing, but I was an English major. And then I kind of stopped for a while. But then in grad school, they had us, because I was getting my MAT for teaching, and it's a long story, but they had us reading romance novels, and I remember because I had read them in college a lot, and on the weekends, for stress relief, and I was still reading them, but the whole the way that they had us analyze them, I was like, oh, I need to start writing again. And so I wrote one, and I was like, I'm gonna write one that I could sell for real. And I finally finished one, and I sent it out to Harlequin, and they requested it, and I was like, oh my God. And then they rejected it, and I went, no, I'm gonna try again. And then they didn't even request that one, and I was like, damn it. And so then I kept writing, and I joined a local RWA chapter, and then I got pregnant, and then I was like, forget it. But I kept writing, and then in the early 2000s, I started having these gay secondary characters kept popping up in my story, and everyone would read them, and they're like, the gay characters are the most interesting characters you write. And I'm like, you're right. And I would always because I kept they kept stealing the show and doing us, and everybody would go, you really need to make them your main characters. But I was like, but I'll never sell them. No one will buy these books, because I was still submitting to mainstream publishing houses, because I was trying to be the only thing I knew was a mainstream romance writer. And they kept saying, this is everybody who I work, all my critique partners would be like, this is where your heart is, it's so clearly. And we were advocates at the time too, and everything. And my own coming out story was all very complicated in all this, which we're not going into today. But so basically, I kind of in the middle of the 2000s sort of sort of shut off. I didn't completely shut off the internet, but close. I mean, there wasn't much internet at that time anyway. But I like stopped. I cut off all my groups, and I didn't really go anywhere. And I just sort of, I just wrote and I was writing special delivery like for like 3-4 years. I just kept writing that damn book, and it got so dark. There was a point where Sam was like a hooker at truck stops. It was like that did not last, but it was so weird. I kept trying to figure it out, and there was this other book I kept writing that kept going in circles, and then I ended up writing Hero First. It was supposed to be for an Alora's Cave contest, but then it got too long and I was late, and thank God that didn't happen. But everything was just crazy. And then by the time I got done writing on this book, there was this industry. Like I went to go look, and I'm like, well, where will I sell this? And then I looked, and there was places. And so then here we are. And yeah, that's awesome. My weird story of how I ended up where I am. But
and what do fans have to look forward to from both of you this year, together and separately?
So right now I'm trying to finish up the very last of my publishing the stuff that got unpublished by all the chaos of places closing, and I still have 4 books left to go. And that's probably going to happen in like March and April. I took a little bit of a break just because it gets expensive. That was almost everything I made last year went back out the door trying to put books back out, and then the new books. And right now I'm writing a 3-book medical trilogy for Dream Spinner. That won't be out this year. It'll be out next year, early next year. And so once I finish that, then it's Love Lessons, and then I'm not sure yet. If I plan too hard, I'm afraid another nuclear bomb will land on my head. So basically, then I'm going to start the plan that I had for 2017 is basically what I'm going to do. And so I have like so many books from so many series that were supposed to be out last year that because I have all these things that I'd started, and various camps will be like, well, where's the book for blank? And where's the book for, and I'm like, it's late. It's not out. And so I would like to write the 2 Love Lessons books and get them out. And then I need to write the next Clockwork series and get it out. I would like to, there's so much audio I want to do. I want to do the whole Minnesota Christmas series and do that, which I need to talk to Iggy about. But I don't know when, and because I have to produce that, I have to figure out when and where and how to get the money and all that. And I would like to do the Clockwork series in audio, but I haven't even republished that one. No, that one's out. It's the Private Gentleman that I have to still get out. Yeah, I'm still in like recovery mode, but we're getting there. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm almost out. I'm like starting to breathe normal, and yeah,
that's
right.
Good. Breathing normal is important.
It's a little less chaotic, but still kind of banana pants. But I'm alive because my patrons, so thank you to them. They kept me solvent and sane. Mostly they're like, Heidi, have you eaten? Heidi, just calm down. It's okay. You're gonna make it. There was a lot of that. So. But.
And Iggy, what's coming up for you on your docket?
Yeah, well, a book. I'm always checking my email for updates from Heidi, and I've been told that there are things coming down the pipe, so I'm excited for that collaboration to continue. But until then, there's a book about to come out that I just did with Christina Lee. Not sure if you're familiar with her, but the book is called Reawaken. It's super sweet and charming. I started the Rainbow Cove series. The first book is Trust with a Chaser by Annabeth Albert. And then I'm prepping currently a book by Joe Raven called Jagged Edge. So all those, Reawaken will be the first one out, but the others will be coming down the pipe soon.
Cool. Excellent. And what's the best way to keep up with everybody online? Iggy, where can we keep up with you?
I laugh because I'm a little bit of an old man when it comes to social media and all that stuff. And Heidi has encouraged me to try to branch out on that. I have not yet. I've resisted her temptations, but maybe sometime soon I'll get more savvy on that front. But so I guess for now, the easiest thing is just put my name into Audible, and you can see what's coming up. And yeah, start there, and hopefully I'll get a little bit more. I'll enter the digital revolution and have more to offer soon.
That works. We can certainly link up to your Audible page.
If you email me and tell me how much you liked the book, I forward it to him and say, they liked the book, Iggy.
It's true. She sends me the fan mail, which is very appreciated.
And Heidi, you're well plugged in. Where do we keep up with you at?
I have been quiet on social media because if I go on Twitter, I just look up skating and like who's going to the Olympics, and I'm gonna break it for Pyeongchang because I gotta watch Nathan Chen go get his gold. But I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Tumblr, where I mostly reblog Yuri on Ice, and I'm on Instagram sometimes. It's all on my. If you go on my website, it's on my. There's a social media and extras page, and then I have my Patreon, which is where I'm actually talking the most right now. They're getting all the dish on what I'm writing right now. That's because I feel bad because they're not going to get to see it for a year. So I'm like, here's everything. Here's everything that I'm doing, sort of, but you can't really see it. But here's like a snippet. So I don't know if that's like nice or torturous, but
a little bit of both, maybe.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. But yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, again, thank you both for taking the time to talk to us about this tremendous collaboration you two have.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.